The Cubs have about 50 relief pitchers right now, and with a bullpen that looks like it should be a lot better than the disastrous we've rolled out to start the 2 previous seasons. In this video, I'm going to give you guys a rundown of this 2025 bullpen from top to bottom, starting with the high leverage guys who should be a lock for the opening day roster, and ending with the guys who probably won't make it but still have a small chance. I'll start with Porter Hodge. Hodge, of course, being the Cubs' de facto closer last year by season's end. He came up through the minors primarily as a starter, but man, was he excellent out of the bullpen, debuting on May 22nd and getting his first save on the 27th of June. Hodge's rise to the top of the Cubs bullpen was a rapid one, and for good reason. With a mid to high 90s fastball and would prove to be one of the best sweepers in Major League Baseball last year, Hodge had just a 1.88 ERA in his 39 games, as well as a 0.84 whip and a 2.75 FIP. If there's any knock on Hodge, it is his walks. He kind of struggled to get hitters to chase on his pitches outside the zone last season, and combined with sometimes spotty commands that did lead him to walk 4 hitters per 9, but when you're keeping the ball in the park like he did last year and striking out almost 11 per 9 innings, some walks aren't going to hurt you too much. Hodge will be just 24 by opening day, and with just 39 MLB games to his name, starting with him in the closer role would be a ballsy move, but he showed last year that he is skilled enough to rise to the occasion. Paired with Hodge back there is Ryan Pressly, the Cubs' new trade addition from Houston, who's 12 years older than Hodge at age 36, but has had 4 to 5 seasons of closing experience. In his current form, he's not the shutdown guy he used to be, but Pressly still managed a 3.49 ERA last year with a 3.10 FIP, so he is far from washed. Pressly has a 5-pitch mix and is really good at keeping the ball on the ground, a skill that will serve him very well in Chicago given the very strong infield defense behind him. Moving away from the 2 main closer slash setup candidates, Tyson Miller is someone who last season pretty quietly forced his way into the back of the Cubs bullpen. Miller, with that sidearm delivery, relied mostly on a slow but very effective fastball as well as his sweeper, and while he didn't get a ton of strikeouts, 7.8 per 9 being very pedestrian for a reliever, he did show elite command with just 1.6 walks per 9, and that helps yield some spectacular results. On the season as a whole, Miller posted a 2.38 ERA, but that drops to 2.15 if you just look at his time with the Cubs. He did give up among the fewest ground balls in baseball last year, and Wrigley's strange conditions definitely helped him out with some balls in the air, but he also didn't get hit particularly hard, and when he does get burned, at least he's rarely put anyone on base to score. It's fair to expect Miller's ERA to jump a bit next year, but regardless, he was a very good relief pitcher and should continue to be one in 2025. Also, excellent value for being a minor league trade acquisition. Another guy the Cubs got basically for free is Ryan Brasier. He's only a Cub because the Dodgers signed half the relievers in existence this offseason and had to get rid of someone, so they made Brasier one of the better players to ever get DFA'd. Like with Miller, walks are super hard to come by when facing Brasier, who also walked only 1.6 per 9 last year with a 3.54 ERA and 3.31 FIP. Last season wasn't incredible for Brasier, especially considering his 0.7 ERA as a Dodger the year before, and at age 37 it's unrealistic to expect he improves that much, but regardless, Brasier, with his slider being his primary pitch and then 3 fastballs being his secondaries, gets a ton of chase and has great commands, and that is a recipe for success. Another offseason trade acquisition pitching for the Cubs this year will be Eli Morgan. Morgan, now 28, was a pretty key part of the outstanding Cleveland bullpen last year, pitching in only 32 games but putting up a 1.93 ERA. The name of the game for Morgan was getting weak contact. He was among the absolute best in baseball at that last year, even if his ground ball rate was very low at 32.2%, and he also limited walks quite effectively despite a steep decrease in Ks per 9 compared to the previous season, which results-wise was also a much worse season. It's hard to say how Wrigley will treat Morgan's fly balls in 2025, but if he keeps being one of the best pitch-to-contact relievers in the game, then he should be just fine regardless of which direction the wind decides to blow. So those were 5 very competent relievers who are pretty much locks to be in the bullpen barring any injury. The pitcher limit for a 26-man MLB roster is 13, meaning unless you're running out a 6-man rotation, the limit for a bullpen is going to be 8 pitchers. So with those final 3 spots, the Cubs have a lot of different guys to consider, and will most likely see at least one of these spots be taken up by a former starting pitcher. Among Jordan Wicks, Javier Assad, Ben Brown, and Colin Ray, only one of these guys, again barring any injuries to the Cubs' first 4 starting pitchers, will be able to take that 5th spot. Out of the bullpen, it seems like Ben Brown is the guy who could be the very best out of all of them. Brown has the high velocity fastball and a nasty secondary pitch that the rest of the guys just don't have, and over his 15 major league games last year, his command wasn't great, but it was far from being in shambles. There is definitely room for concern over the fact that he gave up some of the hardest contact in baseball, but also being a pretty fantastic bat misser, this problem could be minimized if Brown was given a 1-inning role. We'll see how spring training goes, but he could forego the bullpen altogether if things go really well. Keep in mind, in 8 starts last year, while Brown averaged just under 5 innings, he posted a 3.23 ERA. In the bullpen, that ERA was up to 4.41, but he also struck out 11.6 per 9, and so I think we simply need to see more of Brown before we truly know how good he can be and what role he will play. Javier Assad is another interesting case. Everything about his profile says he shouldn't be having much success as a starter, but his results have been completely solid. He made no bullpen appearances last year. In 2023 though, he was mostly a long reliever and a very solid one at that. Assad pitched in 22 games out of the bullpen that year, but threw over 55 innings and managed a 3.07 ERA in those games. Given that he struggled with length last season and ran up some really high pitch counts midway through his games, I think a long relief role is the most comfortable position for Assad going forward, and a role he can really excel from. I'm looking forward to seeing Assad back in the bullpen if that's what the Cubs choose to do, and I think that he can continue to be a very valuable pitcher for this team. Jordan Wicks is a tough one to talk about because he's only made one career major league relief appearance. Regardless, he had a 5.48 ERA last year, making 10 starts with a whip north of 1.6 and even a pretty high walk rate, which is the thing he's supposed to be pretty good at, so it's hard to see where he fits in right now, but we'll see. Maybe he shows out during the spring and earns himself a spot in the bullpen. It's possible, but given how many options the Cubs have, it does feel a bit unlikely. He is just 25 though, and being a former first round pick, there is still some promise, and he does have plenty of time. Colin Ray, on the other hand, is not so young. He is now 34, but he did make 27 starts last year as a Brewer and had a 4.29 ERA on the year with a 4.61 ERA in those starts. Assuming he makes the opening day roster, I would much rather see him in the bullpen than the rotation, but I've also said that Brown and Assad would be nice at the bullpen too, and the Cubs have to have someone be their fifth starter, and while Ray has not been fantastic, he can cover some innings and not be a complete disaster in the process, or he could be put in the bullpen and from there hopefully be decent from a long relief / emergency starter role. Julian Merriweather is going to be a very interesting one to watch this year. He got off to an awful start in 2023 before settling in beautifully and eventually moving to a high leverage late inning role. His 2024 though was marred by injury and also saw him throwing over 2 miles per hour less on average on his fastball and posting a 6.60 ERA, albeit in just 15 innings. Merriweather's got the ceiling to be excellent, but whether he gets a spot at all depends on how he recovers, and he's just got so much competition. Another guy that is kind of in a similar boat is Keegan Thompson. Keegan's been showing up and disappearing on and off for 2 years now, but last season, when he did pitch in the major leagues, it went very well. Keegan in 24 games and over 30 innings had a 2.67 ERA, also striking out 10.7 hitters per 9, easily a career high. Problem is, he also walked a very unsustainable 5.3 per 9, and that's been a problem since he made his debut back in 2021. Given his deep pitch mix and ability to miss bats, there's a chance Keegan becomes a great reliever one day, but with such an obvious flaw in his commands and being out of options, he needs to have a really good spring if he wants to make the major league bullpen and secure some sort of future in the Cubs organization. Nate Pearson is someone who in the past has really struggled with commands like Keegan, but also got a lot of strikeouts, and following a mid-season move to Chicago last year, a lot changed for him. Pearson still showcased his blazing fastball, but his command suddenly seemed to be fixed as he walked just 4 hitters in his 26.1 innings pitched as a Cub. He also struck out just 7.9 per 9 though, compared to 11.5 per 9 as a Blue Jay in 2024, and he gave up 4 homers, giving him an uninspiring 1.4 homers per 9. Still though, the results in Chicago were good. Pearson's ERA was 2.73 in his 19 games, and given his unique fastball relative to the rest of the Cubs bullpen, and the fact that they now really have time to work with him, I have a feeling we will see Pearson in the Cubs bullpen on opening day. You might have noticed that up to this point, I've only mentioned one left-handed pitcher, that being Jordan Wicks, and you do need those in your bullpen. The Cubs' options for their lefty to come in and face lefty hitters aren't incredible, but they do have a few different ways they could go. There is Wicks, of course. There is also Luke Little, who last year had a 3.46 ERA in 30 games, striking out nearly 10 per 9, but also walking over 6. Besides the walks, Little was actually fantastic. He got a lot of Ks, had an unreal ground ball rate of 71%, and had a minuscule barrel rate of 3.4%. But when you're putting so many guys on base, it's not hard for the opponent to do damage, even if you're not allowing hard contact or fly balls, so that is a problem Little really needs to fix. If he does, there's a lot of promise. He is also just 24 years old. Caleb Thielbar is another option. Thielbar is 38 now and had a 5.32 ERA in almost 60 games last year for the Twins, with a whip above 1.5. That all sounds really bad, and it is, but against lefties, he was competent. He allowed lefties to put up just a 653 OPS against him, meaning lefties basically performed like Miguel Amaya when he was pitching, while righties had an 845 OPS, putting them right on par with Seiya Suzuki. Outside of Little and Thielbar, there's also Brandon Hughes, the former Cub who put up a 3.91 ERA for us, and then pitched in Arizona last year, where he appeared in just 15 games and give up 16 earned runs. There's just one more lefty option currently sort of in the Cubs organization, and that is 2016 Cub Rob Zastryzny. Zastryzny pitched in just 9 games last year for the Brewers, giving up just 1 earned run in 7.2 innings pitched. He was then picked up by the Cubs and then promptly DFA'd in the offseason to make room on the 40-man roster for Ryan Brasier. Now, the only condition in which Zastryzny remains in the Cubs organization is if no one picks him up off waivers and he doesn't opt out for free agency after hypothetically clearing waivers, and that's it. Even then, then he'll only be signed on a minor league deal, but there's always a small chance things shake up. So yeah, that's it. Those are the Cubs' only lefty options. Tanner Scott sure would have been an amazing addition. Past all these guys I have mentioned, we have a very long list of guys who are not without promise, but just don't seem to have as much of a chance at making the opening day bullpen as all the guys I have mentioned, whether that's because they are just super inexperienced at the major league level, or have been pitching in the majors a long time but success has just eluded them. There's plenty of guys in this category we've seen in the pinstripes before, guys like Daniel Palencia and Ethan Roberts, and then plenty more you've maybe seen on TV at some point as they've been around for a bit, like Phil Bickford or Brad Keller. And don't forget the Cubs acquisition in the Cody Bellinger trade, Cody Petit, as well as Caleb Killian, who you might recall started the final game of the 2024 regular season and did quite a good job. Again, the list goes on and we'll just have to see who makes the cut versus who starts the regular season in AAA or outside the Cubs organization altogether. I think that's about all I got to say about this Cubs bullpen heading into 2025. Bullpens are so volatile and so much can change so quick. Could be a completely different set of guys by the end of the year, but using the information available to all of us, this was my rundown, and I think this bullpen is not bad. I think we should see a much more competitive bullpen to start this season versus the ones we saw in 2023 and 2024, and hopefully Jed doesn't have to scramble to build a completely new one mid-season for the third year in a row. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. Please like this video, please subscribe, all that. Comment your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one.